Welcome to First. I'm Mark Eichman along with Nichelle Polston and Shirley Min. 5 years ago this weekend, the hurricane known as Sandy was making a beeline for the Northeast. We'll explore its lasting impact this week.
Harry Williams has had an impact on Delaware State University. He's moving on to a larger stage in January. First was the nation's capital this week for the announcement of where he is headed next.
And with Halloween coming up on Tuesday, you know that this show would not be complete unless you were able to experience a Delaware Halloween. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
5 years ago, this was the scene along coastal Delaware. As bad as this looked at the time, Governor Jack Markell would say that Delaware dodged a bullet when the impact of Hurricane Sandy was finally tabulated. Here's a part of our report from 2012. Compared to what beach communities in New Jersey are dealing with, Delaware was lucky.
So if this storm had landed in Ocean City, Maryland, we would be having a very different conversation today.
Tony Pratt is the section manager for Delaware Shoreline and Waterway Management. He says a series of beach nourishment projects completed over the past 12 months have helped the beaches and dunes protect businesses and homes in areas like Rehoboth Beach. Next is figuring out how much sand was swept out to sea by Sandy and decide how much of it natural wave action will return.
One of the things that DANRAC will be doing is actually surveying the beaches. Instead of just looking at it and sort of like thinking and assessing empirically what's going on, we'll actually go out and survey the beaches. We know what was here as far as sand quantities before the storm. We'll go back and we'll survey across these beaches at regular intervals and determine how much sand has been shifted offshore, and then find out, from that how much we expect to come back on.
The clock is ticking, and there is a need to get that sand replaced as soon as possible.
We're unfortunate in that we're very beginning of our northeaster season.
One thing that holds true from that report in 2012, New Jersey was a lot worse off than we were in the first state. Also, as we studied the impact in Delaware, we found over the years just how vulnerable we are off the coast and in the Delaware Bay. That's where we begin our first look. All eyes in Delaware watched the forecast as Superstorm Sandy raced up the East Coast before making a very rare left turn towards the first state.
Well, we were scared to death.
Bethany Beach Mayor Jack Gordon remembers the fear. He also remembers the relief as the storm jogged a bit north and made a direct hit in New Jersey, mostly sparing Delaware.
The mindset back then was, wow, if it hits as close as it was supposed to, we were scared. And so while you're never happy that what happened, it was much nicer for us that it went way up in New Jersey as opposed to here.
This one was weird and different because it wasn't a hurricane, but it was packing more of a punch than a lot of hurricanes, and part of it was where it was going to fall on land.
Even without a direct hit, Sandy caused lots of damage in Delaware. It caused record flooding, dropping nearly 11 inches on parts of Sussex County.
Saw a lot of flooding, a lot of breaching of dooms, just general impact, mainly more from the water. What it did was just to underscore the vulnerability that we have in our state.
Delaware got about $8 million in federal disaster money to do things like repair dunes and upgrade jetties like this one at the Mispillion Harbor near Slaughter Beach.
We probably got in the neighborhood about $8 million. A lot of it went towards dealing with some jetties and things that will help protect wetlands. Wetlands being really our first and best buffer against storms like this.
And while the state is vulnerable to hurricanes like Sandy, it's fall and winter nor'easters that typically do the most damage here. That's a concern for Mayor Gordon as he awaits the start of a dune replenishment project scheduled for early next year.
The last big nor'easter we had was in January of 2016. And that was one that really did the beach in. And so we just want to make sure that it starts early enough so that they can complete the whole job. Because the south end of our boardwalk has no dune protection at all down there. In fact, you can't tell the difference between the beach and the dune, so you can't tell people to keep off the dune if they don't know where it is.
The $17 million beach replenishment will pump sand onto Bethany, South Bethany, and Fenwick Island beaches from an offshore location. But that offshore underwater area was hit hard by Sandy too. University of Delaware professor Art Trembanis studies the ocean floor and puts sensors in place off Delaware's coast just as Sandy approached the state.
It just looked like something or somebody had attacked the seafloor with malice, like a cat had sort of scratched at the seabed, and we could see areas where it was very, very, dug into, that scour and erosion had taken place.
These maps show subway cars and sunken ships that form an artificial reef off Delaware. After Sandy, some subway cars were moved, others destroyed.
We saw subway cars that were rotated, others that were just obliterated and smashed by the storm. So it would have been a very difficult time to have been any kind of creature living on the seafloor.
The UD research demonstrates how the ocean floor affects how waves build offshore before they slam into beaches, dunes, and structures.
So it's really important if we're going to try to improve our models and our predictive capabilities for where different structures, different portions of the beach are going to be affected, that we know what's going on offshore to be able to model that last little bit.
And as beach replenishment projects get underway, it's a reminder that changing the shape of the sand underwater can have big impacts on the land.
Those subaqueous sand dunes tend to have a very nice composition, so coarse sands, maybe some gravel, stuff that makes it very attractive as a beach nourishment material. So it's very you would think, well, let's go harness that. Well, once you do that, now you've changed the offshore bathymetry, and maybe you're letting deeper waves come closer to the shore, and so there is a trade-off there.
So while it's calm today, state leaders remain focused on improving Delaware's ability to withstand the next Sandy.
Delaware is the lowest lying state in the nation, and so these impacts on these storms are going to be potentially devastating, and we saw that, and I think Sandy really underscored to people that this is real, and that we really need to be taking steps to try to be more resilient as a state.
DENREC Secretary Sean Garvin, who worked as EPA regional administrator during Sandy, says he's concerned about the Trump administration's dismissal of climate change and the contribution that will have on frequency and severity of storms coming through Delaware and other places in the future.
Then, Mark, without that federal support or belief that climate change threatens places like Delaware, how does the state work around that?
So the state's kind of going it on their own. Not on their own. They've joined a climate alliance with a number of other states and cities to try to reduce the impact of climate change and reduce the factors that contribute to it, since the federal government's kind of stepping back from doing that.
Your story also focused on Sandy's impacts offshore, so what's the future of that work?
Professor Trembanis said there's better, more detailed mapping of maybe the moon and even Mars than we have of the ocean floor. So they're going to keep focusing on the composition of that area, studying the effects that storms can have on the ocean floor when it comes to installations like offshore wind and maybe the underwater cables that go through that area, see how we can protect them from storms maybe like Sandy.
Okay, thanks so much, Mark. Now, this is not the first time that we have spent measuring the impacts of storms on Delaware. We dug into our archives from nearly 20 years ago, and at the time, Hurricane Floyd had done a number on the interior of Delaware. There were also plans underway to try and fortify the mouth of the Delaware Bay in Lewis.
It is widely believed that no community is 100% prepared for any natural disaster, and in many cases, the devastation is felt in dollars and even human life.
Typically, during most coastal storms, northeasters, Lewis has experienced extensive flooding.
The city of Lewis, like many East Coast areas, can't escape the constant threat of a hurricane or nor'easter. But last winter, Lewis began building what it calls a disaster-resistant community by way of the National Project Impact Program.
To create a disaster-proof community, it sounds to me almost as though your hope is to build almost a bubble around us. And wouldn't it be nice if we could do that?
Yeah, that would really be wonderful, but it's not quite that easy with the forces in nature. The goal of the program is to have the communities look at their risks and hazards and then develop a long-term plan on how to mitigate those problems and hopefully prevent the loss of lives and the damage to properties in the future.
You know, you have to be careful, do you not? Because Lewis is one of the boom towns of Delaware. This is where people are hoping, at least perhaps even me at my age, of someday being able to retire here. A lot of the state's future economy is built upon this region. So you hear of making disaster proof, I immediately think we're not building along the beaches anymore. Is that true?
Well, that's certainly part of it, Nancy, is having good, strong building codes and land use management practices in the community, and ensuring that those are enforced, because obviously we don't want to see people place themselves in harm's way.
That segment featuring Nancy Karabjanian was from 1999. Should be interesting to see what conversations we're having about this 20 years from now. And if you want to check out some of our other coverage on the anniversary of Sandy, visit our new online news home, WHYY.org/news.
Coming up on First, a look at how the restaurant group Sodell Concepts is doing more than 3 years after the death of its leader. And need a reason to be scared? Well, First Experience will take care of that.
Delaware's higher education system is about to change with the announcement this week that Dr. Harry Williams, the president of Delaware State University, will leave his post in January to become the head of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. Now, the fund helps students as well as represent a network of historically black colleges and universities. I was in Washington Monday night when the announcement was made.
President of Delaware State University, Dr. Harry Lee Williams.
In a huge room full of high achievers and students pursuing their dreams, soon after Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester introduced Dr. Williams, he shared some of his story.
Becoming the president of a historically black college or university was a career desire that was born in me when I received my HBCU baptism at the North Carolina A&T State University as the director of admissions.
The work he put in paid off when Williams landed at Delaware State University.
Students, dreams come true.
Now he's taking on a new role, CEO and president of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. But Williams admits there are some challenges ahead.
When you have so many opportunities in terms of institutions, you got to make a strong case, and that'll be part of my job, working with the university presidents, working with stakeholders, and being very clear on advancing the mission of Thurgood Marshall College Fund.
Another part of Williams' agenda is to identify top talent and encourage students to go to high-profile companies like Apple.
There is a need in our country to have talent from underrepresented areas, and our universities are the perfect place that can help to celebrate that and to move those students forward.
The search for a replacement for Dr. Williams is going to take some time. There are people I've spoken with who say it could take up to a year. Delaware education reporter Chris Barish joins me in the conversation about Harry Williams' departure. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Nikki. So history can be our guide here. It took 8 months after Patrick Harker announced he was leaving the University of Delaware for them to name Dennis Sasanis as his successor. Yes. Delaware State itself had an interim president for 15 months before Williams took over. So these searches can take a while, but you want to get it right.
Of course, Delaware State University, founded in 1891, is considered a leader among HBCUs. In fact, Williams is credited for continuing and building on changes by predecessors. Tell me about the reaction.
Well, everybody I spoke to said it's a big loss for the university, but an opportunity that he couldn't pass up. Legislator Earl Jakes told me he was actually saddened by Williams' departure, that he'll be very hard to replace, and he had, quote, changed the image of the university. So he's really made his mark. Oh, and by the way, that was quite a coup getting the tip that he was making the announcement Monday in D.C. It's good to be first, right?
Well, we're called first for a reason, Chris. Truly lots of support from members of Delaware's congressional delegation and, of course, current and former members of the Board of Trustees. So they're all very proud of his accomplishments.
Well, look, his positive impact will be felt for years. First of all, under his stewardship, the student body expanded and became more diversified substantially. There's new research buildings on campus, especially that glittering optics center that everybody should go see. And there's also like a new spirit of cooperation between Del State, the University of Delaware, and the City of Wilmington.
Of course. Well, we'll both be following that selection process, Chris, and looking in on how Harry Williams is doing and the future as well. For those of you at home, you can also see our coverage from earlier this week on WHYY.org/news.
We've discussed several times over the years here on First about the growing presence of a tech scene here in Delaware. An event last weekend and one coming up next week in Wilmington could add to that growth. So for our first person segment this week, we welcome Zach Seward, a familiar face and voice from his time at WHYY and now with the group Technically Philly. Also here is Ben DuPont, who was part of the tech competition known as Open Bracket. So welcome both to you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Shirley.
Ben, I want to start with you and talk about Open Bracket. We have a little video that we're going to be showing while we're talking about it of the opening night of the coding competition. Video's a little purple, but people get the idea. It was from the lights at the Queen. But a lot of people with laptops, tons of people.
Yes.
Coding, just sort of for everyone at home.
Yeah, so
the
look,
language
coding is a generic description of a software developer, and these are people that write lines of code and pretty much impact everything from the way your car functions to your cell phone to the hoagie you're going to buy tonight. So,
and you were saying every line of code starts with an open bracket.
Every line of code starts with an open bracket, hence the name Open Bracket.
So tell me about the purpose of Open Bracket, and do you feel like it was a success?
Absolutely, it was a success, a huge success. It really complements Zip Code Wilmington, and think of it this way. Open Bracket is working to bring high-end software developers across the country into Delaware, and Zip Code Wilmington is learning to grow our base of coders. And the two, I think, is a pretty powerful one-two punch for our community.
And real quickly, Zip Code Wilmington.
Zip Code Wilmington is a 90-day boot camp located in the Mill in downtown Wilmington. It takes people with no prior coding experience and gives them 1,200 hours of coding instruction in 90 days.
Wow.
And they come out on average earning with jobs that pay, I think, $68,000, $69,000, which is about 2.5x what they were earning 90 days earlier.
And Zach, you were saying that some coding schools had kind of maybe taken some missteps, but how is Zip Code Wilmington, what have they done right?
Yeah, we've covered it since its inception. I mean, it's really interesting to see. There's been a couple of high-profile coding schools that have closed in the last 2 or 3 months, and their model was we do the training and we send our graduates out into the world for them to find work as they will. The interesting thing about Zip Code that I think has earned recognition from even like the Obama administration, gave them a little daps, was they go in, they start the program with the end job in sight. So they work with the banks, they work with other technology companies who are looking to hire coders that are knowledgeable in certain programming languages. And it's a boot camp, right? They really hammer those languages into these new grads. So they're going through the program with a goal and an end job in sight, which I think is the innovative twist to what Zip Code Wilmington is doing. Technically is the main organizer behind Delaware Innovation Week. Talk to me about what's being dubbed, it's a week-long celebration of tech and innovation. Yeah, we do it, and it started in Philadelphia 6 years ago at this point. This is our third Delaware Innovation Week. It's November 3rd to 11th. It's a week-long celebration. We're talking about 20-plus events. Technically itself, we organize sort of the 3-4 big tent poles of the week. So we have a business conference for you to take your business to the next level. We have a dev conference for coders and other developers to up their skills. And then we close it all out with a big closing bash called the Innovation Celebration. We do the Innovation Awards as a way to highlight some of the cool things that are going on in Delaware. So it's quite the event. I encourage you to come out and check it out.
Okay, yeah. Well, I will accept. So I'll put this question to the both of you, but I keep hearing how, the tech scene in Wilmington, it is growing, that, it's exploding. And I mean, I hear that all the time, but what do you think Delaware has done right to sort of nurture this growth? And either of you can jump in.
I think it's a combination of bottom-up and top-down support. I mean, from the bottom up, you have got organizations like Technically, which I think is making a maybe underappreciated contribution to the community from not only from its reporting, but Innovation Week. I think you've got organizations like the Mill, which are a place for startups to emerge. And if you walk in the Mill today, it's packed. Mm-hmm. I think you've got organizations like Zip Code, Open Bracket, and others. And I think that's the bottom-up piece of it. I think at the top you have very friendly a political environment, Republicans and Democrats that I think have the same end goal in sight, which is great jobs for people in Delaware.
But Zach, what does Delaware have to do what more does Delaware have to do to kind of stay ahead of the game?
Yeah, I think the great thing about Delaware is that, you know, it's a small state and is using that to its advantage, right? We at Technically, we cover Philly, 4 of the markets, including Delaware. You really see in Delaware sort of an ease, you know, it's always easy to go from one person to the next to make those key connections happen. I think Delaware has done a good job of building the infrastructure, doing the if you build it, they will come kind of thing. And now it's just about, you know, it's just about supporting the ones that are growing, be that the Carvertises of the world or the Barn Creative, various tech firms that are growing businesses here in Wilmington. It's about finding those next connections for them to raise funding, to make more hiring. And on the talent end, it is, again, being able to hire people who are going to help grow those businesses on the technical side of things.
All right, very good. Zach Seward from Technically Philly and Ben DuPont, who has, among many hats, a part of the Tech Event Open Bracket here in Wilmington. So to learn more about Delaware Innovation Week in Wilmington, go to technically/Delaware. That's technical.ly/Delaware.
Jim Bell really likes Halloween, but when trick-or-treaters were out, cars kept running the stop sign outside of his Dover house. So he took matters into his own hands, and for 5 years, the Bells have used elaborate Halloween decorations to get people to slow down for a look. We stopped by the house for a look ourselves in this week's First Experience.
Hi, I'm Jim Bell. Me and my wife was going to get married on Halloween, and we had to wait, so it's all good. Well, it took about 7 or 8 days just to set it up. A lot of wire has to be cut to build the frames for them, and just whatever works. We've been doing it for 5 years. Too many people run stop signs, and there's kids in the neighborhoods. That was the whole idea, was just to slow the people down coming through here. Now they do. Oh, a lot of it came from auctions and dollar stores and high impact, low budget. Oh, some people just ride by and thumbs up and ooh, the kids come by and they're hooping and hollering because they're riding the bus by and they're, oh, cool, cool, cool. They like everything. They like the robot. My mom thought it was stupid because it was a deer feeder. My buddy was throwing away deer feeders. And I said, no, don't throw them away. I'll do something with them. Then it all just started going up. Vacuum cleaner parts, funnels, toys, and a little bit of everything mixed there, really. There's no theme. I just go with the flow of it. Oh, I want to do my own Frightland type thing. Just takes a little bit of doing. Not afraid to do it. It's fun. When the kids come down and they go trick-or-treating, you know, and they're smiling from ear to ear, they're either scared or they're smiling or don't know what to think about it. But when they're coming up here smiling, it's well worth it, just to see them all smiling.
Jim wasn't going to decorate the house this year until we called about coming out, and we're glad he spent the week getting the house ready for us and for all the trick-or-treaters. Hopefully he'll continue to decorate the house for years to come.
The death of Delaware restaurateur Matt Haley was unexpected and left many wondering about the future of his culinary empire. But more than 3 years after Haley's death, the company he founded, Sodell Concepts, is thriving and celebrating the opening of its 10th restaurant in southern Delaware.
Located on the Coastal Highway, Blue Coast Rehoboth is the 10th restaurant in the Sodell Concepts family. The newest member is a spin-off of Sodell's flagship seafood restaurant in North Bethany of the same name, opened by founder Matt Haley in 2001.
I'm big on nostalgia and I'm big on honoring those that have come before us. So I'm really excited that we could make a place that I feel like Matt would be really happy and he would want to hang out here and he would really look to us and say, you guys did a really good job.
Scott Kammerer took over as CEO 3 years ago after Haley died in India on a humanitarian mission. Many wondered what would happen to the company without Haley, and what about his philanthropic efforts. The longtime friends and business partners met serendipitously on the steps of a church in 1999. Both battled with addiction and were fighting for sobriety. They clicked right away.
But looking back on it, meeting Matt that day really changed the focus and the direction of my life. He helped me be very self-aware and look within myself and try and be a better person and change the way I was looking at the world and doing business.
Together, the business partners opened 7 more restaurants between Lewis and Fenwick Island. The more the business grew, the more they gave back to the community. Haley's good deeds in Delaware and around the world earned him the James Beard Foundation Humanitarian of the Year Award in 2014.
He had incredible dreams and vision, and I had the ability to follow through and carry out things. So we were a good combination in a lot of ways, and Matt always was willing to take chances, and never was one to back down from a fight. And that's one thing that I think this company has really inherited from him.
And that stick-to-itiveness is paying off. What began as a small company preparing 37 dinners on its first night now cranks out 30,000 meals a week in the summertime. Kammerer and his team also inherited Haley's penchant for doing good. Sodell Cares was founded in 2015 to continue Haley's mission of helping those in the communities where Sodell Concepts does business. In its 2 years, the nonprofit has given well over $100,000 to local organizations that help kids, the elderly, and those coming out of prison.
I think that we've grown into a company that people can be proud of, that people can be proud of working here. So we spend a lot of time trying to make beautiful, simple food. We spend a lot of time developing the people we work with, and we spend a lot of time trying to make the world a better place. And that's really what the foundation of this company is, and that's the foundation of what Matt really wanted this company to be.
Sodell Concepts has 10 restaurants, a catering company, and a food truck with 1,000 employees on the payroll. Scott Kammerer says he could see his company growing into a regional and national level player in the culinary world. But for now, he's perfectly happy with the 10 restaurants and contributing to the community.
Next week on First, the Nanaco Indians also have a first, their first female leader. We team up with Delaware Today magazine for a profile, and the first anniversary of the 2016 election is just days away. A look at the impact on the first state.
And that is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Chris Barish, Nichelle Polston, Shirley Min, I'm Mark Eichman. Have a great week.